Hi, my name's Craig Thomas. I'm coming to you from Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm hoping that this presentation finds you well, even though I'm not in class and Dr. K is not in class. So hopefully some of you are and you get to watch my presentation. In the earlier portion of this chapter, we focused on the foray into modern music as it was displayed by the works of Debussy. There are a lot of different ways to say that name, but I say Debussy. But I would even go so far as to say that the beginning of modern music is really at the end of the Romantic era. And we got to see part of that coming out of Richard Strauss and a little bit of Mahler even. Thankful that I did not have the opportunity to discuss my personal opinions on the writings of Debussy, because I don't really care for his musical style. I do have the opportunity now to write and discuss the attributes of Arnold Schoenberg, and I have qualified him as the atonal composer. Um, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means here in a second, but I'd like to start with a little biographical information first. Schoenberg was born on September 13th, 1874, and it's a very important date because the number 13 is a little bit of a big deal for him throughout his life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But just note that he was born on September 13th to a Jewish family in Vienna, Austria. And this family was not really a hugely influential family, mostly because they were middle class. His dad was a merchant, a local business owner, and his mother was a piano teacher. As we all know, that piano teachers don't exactly make the greatest amount of money. So both of these careers were not hugely liquid. They didn't make a lot of money. So growing up in this environment would undoubtedly shape the young Arnold into what we would consider to be a newly innovated music that attempted a continuity of tradition. Arnold Schoenberg wanted to do some things with his music that were different than anybody else. But at the same time, he also wanted to have a continuity with the German national style of music. So we're going to see a little bit of both of those playing out in his tradition. I really believe that the most impressive feat of Schoenberg's career was that he was mostly educated by himself in the ways of music, but that really doesn't come to us as much of a surprise given his background. After all, his dad was a merchant, so no musical experience there. His mom was a piano instructor, but more than likely she wasn't very knowledgeable in music theory. She probably wasn't also the best instructor. You know, she was doing this as a supplemental source of income. But personally, I would not believe that she would be the most artful instructor. So instead, we have to look to the first actual instance of education that arrives on the scene, and that would be his counterpoint instructor with a composer known as Alexander von Zemlinsky. Zemlinsky is going to be a very important character in the role of Schoenberg's life, and that's going to be for several different reasons. Number one, Zemlinsky was a tireless proponent of Mahler throughout his career and was also notable for setting his own music to poetry. So those two things are really important for us to know. Number one, Zemlinsky really liked Mahler and makes several references to his works throughout his own career, but is also being a big proponent of him as he is a music instructor. But second, that Zemlinsky takes a bunch of his works and sets it to the libretto of poetry. So these influences will undoubtedly make their way into Schoenberg's life and also help pave the way for his innovative compositions. It's often said that we mimic the lives and styles of our teachers that we admire, and Schoenberg was no exception to that fact. As a young musician in his 20s, Schoenberg began to write music for short operas as a means of income. So, he had to find a way to make money, and this is the best way that he could figure out how to do that, while attempting to make a name for himself in his other work. So he's composing on the side. But as we know as musicians, I know personally that the name Craig Thomas is never going to be celebrated in lights as a great composer, so I have to rely on the fact that I have another job and I have to do that while I do my composition on the side. Um, uh, you might say that we have to have the bread on the table, as well as devote time to composition. And so Schoenberg was doing the same thing, and this juggling act produced several works, and one of those I would like you to listen to now. What you're about to hear is Opus 4, a string sextet named The Transfigured Night, or Verklaart Nacht. And while it took him about a little less than a month to produce this work, it makes use of poetry and emotions, no doubt with the influence of his teacher. You're going to see a lot of things that are going to play out in this piece, and as we got into Romanticism, we noticed that emotions were becoming a bigger player on the scene as far as how we were incorporating it into these works. But it's going to be even more so with Schoenberg. You're going to see that a lot throughout his works. This same work, Transfigured Night, was later transformed into a full orchestral work, which is what you're going to hear in the listening example. This piece is really considered a tribute to his future wife, Matilda von Zemlinsky. We've heard that name before. His teacher, Matilda, is the sister of his counterpoint teacher, so that's where they met. But the poetry that this work is set to is really kind of a sad story. Basically, it's about two lovers who have this fight. The one of them, the female in the relationship, becomes pregnant by another guy and confesses it to the original guy. Then he has to contemplate that apology, and then he finally ends up forgiving her. So as you're listening to this work, that's how it's going to go. There's 3 different parts. Now, I'm only going to ask you to listen to the first 2 minutes, but if you have time later on, I would listen to the whole thing because I think that this is a very inspirational work. The very first part of it is the pleading for forgiveness. The second part is the contemplation by the man to decide if he should forgive her or not. And then the final part is the actual forgiveness. And you should notice the difference throughout. As you listen to this example, please pay close attention to the homage that he pays to Brahms and Wagner, because both of those individuals he considered to be the composers right before him that were continuing the German tradition, so that was very important for him. And he's going to be using a lot of lofty chromatics through that. That's kind of his way of saying, thanks guys for the tradition, and he's going to continue that. But he's also going to pay a lot of attention to detail as he attempts to further the German national style, not only through those lofty chromatics, but also in the use of emotion and the sense of mystery. So, as you listen to this next example, please listen to the first 2 minutes and make note of those chromatics.